Hello, I'm Mark Ells, Town Manager, and this is my community update for this week. Well, we continue to um, try to progress through this recovery from the COVID-19 situation. If you were following some of the governor's actions last week, we began to hear from him regarding no further movement in the recovery until we began to see some more stabilizing and positive numbers relevant to cases of COVID in Massachusetts. So that means he's not going to move into um, the next step in phase three, which would further have released some activities. And in fact, the governor modified one of his orders regarding group size. And there's many details to this, but two major ones were relevant to the number of people who are allowed to gather in groups outdoors. It had been lifted to 100. Now it's been brought back to 50. And then internal to buildings and facilities, it was at 50 and now it's back to 25. So that has far reaching effects on us reopening facilities, certainly public facilities such as the Youth and Community Center, certainly our senior center, but there are other complications there in that that is a high-risk group of individuals who utilize that facility. So I'm envisioning that that is not going to open anytime soon. And certainly our public schools, certainly youth sports or any sports, activities that may occur. Certainly our hopes that we might do fireworks and activities on Labor Day weekend are no longer viable. This is a bit of a setback for us. Today, the governor came out discussing public schools in the state, and I listened to what the governor said. I have not read his information. He just spoke at noontime today, and basically they've categorized communities into four major categories. And if you're in a green, yellow, or red, it signifies what you can do in your public schools relative to opening in class, a hybrid approach, and a completely online approach. And so certainly Barnstable is in a yellow category. You might look at the local stats in the town and say that, well, maybe we're right on the edge of green to yellow, which would allow us in class and hybrid. But I think we're going to find, for a whole host of reasons, that we're in the yellow and will probably remain there. There's certain statistical criteria that they're using to establish that. So that really presents some challenges, certainly to our superintendent and school system. We'll wait to see the true outcome of the governor's most recent, decisions. But hopefully we can get our kids back to a solid learning environment this fall. And we're certainly working hand in hand with our school superintendent to make sure that happens regardless of the situation. I've already alluded to the Youth and Community Center. We have many questions. When's it going to open? People need to understand that we're not going to open the doors and everybody's going to flood in. I mean, we can only have 25 people in a particular area and in a very controlled environment. So that may not merit reopening that facility in the immediate future. We're also looking for how, as we move from the warmer weather into the cooler weather, we might be able to continue to offer youth programming, and probably greater than perhaps we have. Now, we'd have to have fewer participants, but at least would have a place for the kids to go, especially if a portion of their school day is remote. And so that might give them an opportunity to, in a controlled, safe manner, to get out there and socialize and be active. So we're really looking at the use of that facility and how it might open at some point in the future. But again, as each week passes, and now we're not progressing, we're actually going backwards a little bit, still in phase 3 of the recovery. It presents new challenges each week for us to open facilities safely. So we'll keep you advised as we progress. Certainly our beaches are still very active. We've had a real stretch of warm weather, very busy this weekend. The town of Barnstable is held pretty consistent, pretty flat, with actually very few instances of positives that are being reported. So that's good, even though we've had a big influx of people for the summer season. Hopefully it holds that way. But our students are leaving. People will say, well, are you going to keep everything open later into the season because we're working remotely, so we're going to stay here? We're losing all of our lifeguards. The colleges have accelerated. If you are, especially out of state, if you are going to college, many kids have asked to report as soon as the 6th or the 8th of this month. And therefore, we're losing our staff. Therefore, we will not have lifeguards at many beaches. You're going to start to see those announcements come up in the next week or two. Once we lose our gate staff, then we close down facilities. So we won't leave facilities open unmanned. We can't do that. There are many problems in doing that. We're looking at getting porta potties at those facilities that close prior to certainly Labor Day. And I'm thinking that if people don't go back to in-class school, and if they are working remotely, they may stay here at least through Columbus Day. So we're really going to have to look, and the weather could be wonderful through Columbus Day. So we're looking very carefully at how we might keep all of our facilities, outdoor facilities, open. We're working with our school superintendent again on programming through the year, not just school year, not just summer season. There's typically a divide with, school keeps everybody real busy school year, and rec department keeps everybody real busy off season. We'll probably have to come up with an enhanced combined effort there, so that all of our youth in the community keep busy in places where we want them to be safe and healthy, and certainly not going off in other directions. There's a lot of other things going on. I would certainly encourage you to look at the agendas for our boards, committees, commissions, town council. We have some major policy discussions coming up at town council in the coming months relevant to fiscal policy. And once we get through general fiscal policy, we're going to get into water and wastewater. So keep in tune with that if you have the time. They are still remote meetings, but I would highly encourage you to watch and participate and listen, follow along what's going on in our economy and how that will impact the provision of programs and services through your local government here in Barnstable. So I thank you for remaining diligent in complying with all of the requirements that our governor is setting for us, to following proper social distancing and group size, taking personal responsibility to make decisions relevant to this situation so that you keep yourself and your family and your community safe. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
Hi, everyone. This is Superintendent Meg Mayo-Brown with this week's update on reopening schools for the fall. In this week's update, I hope to cover a couple of new topics, which include new public health metrics released by Governor Baker in consideration of reopening schools, changes to our mask and face covering policy for our youngest learners. I would like to share some of our family survey results for our learning models and describe our learning expectations for our full remote period of time from September 16th to September 25th. And then also describe what remote learning would look like for students who may be in quarantine at some point in time during the school year. Certainly, we hope that does not happen, but we do need to be prepared in case. And then where we are in terms of our partnerships with community organizations. This week, Governor Baker and then Commissioner of Education Jeff Riley followed with some specific guidance for schools by using public health metrics. So you'll see here a map that's published by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health that really is intended to show through a color-coded system where communities are at relative to the average daily incident rate of COVID over a rolling 2-week period. So this map shows what the incident rate was for the period of July 26th to August 8th, and then is using a pretty simple color coding system of red, yellow, and green to describe for the public where these communities are relative to the virus. So as we look at the CAPE here, you can get a sense of where we are relative to the daily incident rate. And we are showing both green and white, which is the lowest number of cases. As we look at the information that came out from the Commissioner of Education that corresponded to the color coding of the map, he describes for us the expectation for learning model. So if a community is in the red on the map, the expectation for the learning model from the state would be that that community would be in full remote learning. If a community is in the yellow on the map, then the district should be considered to be looking at the hybrid model or remote if there are extenuating circumstances. And then certainly the expectation for green is that we're full-time in person or a hybrid model. I just want to remind everyone, the reason for Barnstable Public Schools being in the hybrid model for grades 4 through 12 is because of the commitment we have to the CDC guidelines of physical distancing of 6 feet or more. That really, again, indicates the number of students we can have in the building at any one time. The other metric that we are going to look at as a school system is the data coming out from Barnstable County on daily cases. We'll be looking at this data, again, every day to see what cases are looking like across the county. Folks have said, well, why are you looking at county data? Just look at the town data. We're looking at the county data because a number of our employees come from across Cape as well as off Cape. Additionally, we have students who school choice into our district. So we feel it's just best to take a broader look at Barnstable County rather than specifically just focus in on the town. As we look at the county data for Barnstable over the past 14 days, you can get a sense from looking at the number of daily cases where we're at. You see a couple of spikes have happened, and then a couple of days where the case count has been low. This is why it's important to look at a 14-day average, and that's what we do on a daily basis, is what does the past 14 days look like for us. So we'll look at this data, and again, we'll look at the Department of Public Health map, and these 2 data points will continue to guide our decision-making about fall reopening. As of now, I am not recommending that we change any component of our reopening plan based on the data that we have now on August 13th. Our reopening plan describes that educators begin on August 31st. Our students begin on Wednesday, September 16th through September 25th. That is a remote only for all students for that period of time. Then beginning on September 28th, we start our hybrid and in-person learning at a reduced schedule of 4 hours a day, and then full implementation of our model by October 13th. We are changing our mask and face covering policy to include all students who attend Barnstable Public Schools. Previously, the policy had been for students in grades 2 and above, based on conversations with our district physician, as well as feedback from parents and educators. We're modifying that requirement now to include all students from preschool through grade 12, unless, of course, there's a behavioral or medical exemption. Thank you to those of you who were able to take our family survey. We had quite a number of responses between this survey and our last survey. Principals are following up with families that they have yet to hear from to make sure that we have everyone included to the greatest extent possible. What I'm showing here is the difference between remote learning options for K7 through and as well as our high school. You'll see that our families have at the grade levels of K through 7, there's about a 72 to 27 split there, with 27.6% of our families saying that they would opt in for 100% remote for their children. That is a little bit different at the high school, where we see an 80-20 split, with 20% of families indicating they would opt into remote learning at the high school level. So again, here you can see our response rate: 2,344 responses for K through 7 and 1,057 responses for the high school. So we still need, the survey remains open. If you haven't yet taken the survey, please do so that we can get an accurate head count. Our expectations for remote learning during the period of September 16th to September 25th, when everyone is engaged in remote learning, is that remote learning is synchronous learning with asynchronous components. In other words, it's going to look very different this fall as compared to last spring. So we need our students and families to think about remote learning for the fall as really being a full school day, where they're engaged in learning either through synchronous live opportunities with their classes and teachers, and then periods of asynchronous learning where students are completing independent work or assignments as given by their teacher. I'm going to show an example of what remote learning during that period looks like for our youngest students in grades kindergarten through third grade. You can see here that your child would be signing on, using their device, would sign on at 9 o'clock in the morning and start a morning meeting with their teacher and their class. At 9:30, they would have a bit of a break, and then at 9:50, classroom teachers would begin their ELA instruction. And as you look at this example, please know that the blue designates synchronous or live instruction, and the green represents asynchronous or independent work time. So you can see throughout the day, our expectation is that students are signing on at 9 and they are with us until 3:30. But through that period of time, there are opportunities for live instruction as well as independent work. And teachers will make the determinations, more precise determinations in terms of what is live instruction and what is independent work. If we take a look at the Barnstable United, and again, as you look at the BUE schedule, I'm not going to show all the schedules today, just in the spirit of being efficient with time. But as you look at the BUE schedule, know that BIS looks very similar to this. But again, students are signing on with their device at 8:20 in the morning for morning meeting with their class and their teacher, and then are with us for the entire school day until 2:50, with periods of synchronous and asynchronous learning occurring throughout the day as assigned by their teachers. I've had a number of questions from parents wondering what happens if their child needs to be quarantined for any reason. And again, we're certainly hoping that does not occur, but in terms of having plans for that scenario, if we have students that need to be in quarantine who are normally in-person or hybrid, they're going to shift to remote learning, but they're going to remain with their current teachers. They just won't come to school for their in-person portion of their learning model. Everything will be done remotely with them and for them. So that may be for students who are in quarantine. We may have an unfortunate event where an entire classroom needs to be in quarantine. If that's the case and the teacher is healthy and able to continue teaching and learning, the teacher would do that with the class remotely. Obviously, no one would be in person for their in-person or hybrid portion, but the teacher, for whatever period of time the class needed to be quarantined, would continue the school experience, but in the remote learning method that I described previously. And I've had a number of questions around high school athletics, and whether or not students who are engaged in 100% of remote learning, whether they're eligible for athletics. I have a call into the Commissioner of Education wondering if that's a local or state decision. So I'm waiting for guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, whether remote-only students are eligible for athletics. I know a number of our student athletes are waiting on that information. As soon as we have it, we'll get it out to our families and students. In terms of next steps, we're working on our cohort placements. We hope to have that out to families by August 23rd. We will have a process for cohort change requests. I don't know that we can honor all the requests that we may receive, but we will institute a process for requesting changes. So in other words, if your child is assigned to the A cohort, but that's just not going to work for your family, you need your child in the B cohort, we'll have a process in place for you to make that request. Again, it's just going to depend on space availability, whether we can honor those requests. For our students who are in cohort D, remember those are the students who are 100% remote. Once school starts, we're going to ask that students remain in cohort D. If they want to transition out to hybrid or in-person, those transitions will be permitted at the end of the marking period. So for example, if you have a high school student who starts out in cohort D, fully remote, and then at some point says, you know what, I want to return to the hybrid or in-person model at the high school, they will need to wait until November when the marking period occurs to make that transition back into in-person. Please be on the lookout for school-specific information. Building principals are going to start communicating more frequently with families around specific planning that's occurring within their particular schools, so know that is coming. We continue to have conversations with both HYCC and the YMCA to see what they're able to do for our families that need supervised care for their children while they're in their during remote periods of learning in the hybrid model. So as an example, if you have a Barnstable United elementary student who is at school Monday, Tuesday, and learning remotely Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you need care, supervised care Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are working with our community organizations to see if there's an opportunity or if they have availability to be able to provide safe spaces for our students to be able to continue to engage in remote learning. We know that that's an important piece for our families, and please know we're working with some of our organizations to see if they'll be able to meet that need for the community. Finally, please continue to check our website for continued updates. On our website, there's a tab at the top that says reopening. If you click on that tab, it'll take you to the page with all our latest information on the calendar, on our hybrid models, on our reopening plans, and anything else that that is new. We'll be posting directly there, sort of one-stop shopping for anything related to reopening for Barnstable Public Schools. As they close, again, I want to say thank you so much to everyone for your patience and support as we continue to navigate our way through reopening our schools for the fall. Thank you.